Mishawaka Common Council for Monday, May 6, 2024, will please come to order. Good evening. Those of you who are in physical attendance, welcome. We're happy to see you. If you would, please take a moment and check your cell phone to make sure that you have placed that on silent or vibrate. And for those of you who are participating remotely, we welcome you as well. Members of the public are asked to place their microphone on mute if they are participating remotely during the meeting, with the exception of any public hearing. At the appropriate point in the public hearing, I will invite the public to unmute their microphone for purposes of submitting such comments as they may wish to make, one person at a time. All persons wishing to make public comments will be asked to first state their name and address for the record, and after completing the comment, members of the public are once again asked to place their microphone on mute. We thank all of you for your cooperation this evening. With that, if you would, please join us in rising for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Carroll? Mr. Benicki?
Here.
Mr. Emmons?
Here.
Ms. Hahn?
Here.
Mr. Mamalenti?
Here.
Mr. Violi?
Here.
Mr. Hixenbaugh?
Here.
One council member is remote.
Thank you. The record will reflect then that this evening we will conduct all roll call votes. Approval of the minutes of our regular meeting of April 22nd, 2024. Are there any additions or corrections? In hearing none, the minutes will stand approved as received from the clerk's office. Petitions, communications, remonstrance, and memorial. We have none, nor do we have any report of any special committee, so we'll move into ordinances on first reading.
Number 2024-11, an ordinance amending Chapter 50 of the Municipal Code of the City of Mishawaka, Indiana, is from time to time amended, commonly known as the Park and Recreation Ordinance of the City of Mishawaka, Indiana.
Proposed ordinance 2024-11 will be assigned to the Public Health and Safety Committee.
Proposed ordinance number 2024-12, an ordinance of the Common Council of the City of Mishawaka, Indiana, establishing a designated outdoor refreshment area.
Proposed ordinance 2024-12 will be assigned to the Public Health and Safety Committee. I'll also note for the record that this evening the council coordinated their calendars with the administration and will be conducting a public information meeting on DORA in June. Madam Clerk, what was the specific date of DORA?
June 12th at 6 p.m.
June 12th at 6 p.m. here in the council chambers. So until such time as we conduct the informational meeting, you will not see DORA advance to second reading on our agenda, but that decision will be made after we conduct the informational session on June 12th.
Proposed ordinance number 2024-13, an ordinance establishing a schedule of rates and charges for electric energy and services rendered by the Mishawaka Utilities Electric Department.
Proposed ordinance 2024-13 will be assigned to the Budget and Finance Committee. And once again, in light of the specific proposal that's pending before the council, we'll be scheduling a public informational meeting on that matter as well. Madam Clerk, what was the date of that informational meeting?
The informational meeting will be at 6 p.m. on May 23rd with a special council meeting on May 30th at 6 p.m.
Thank you. So once again, we will be conducting an informational meeting to share additional information with regard to the proposed electric utility rate increases. Resolutions.
Resolution R 2024-09, a resolution of the Common Council of the City of Mishawaka, Indiana, approving a petition of the Mishawaka Board of Zoning Appeals for the property located at 415 Bittersweet Road. This is a use variance to allow for a restaurant with drive-through, Jimmy John's, in a C1 General Commercial District, 415 Bittersweet Road.
Thank you. We will now open the public hearing on proposed resolution 2024-09. Anyone wishing to speak in favor, if you would, please come forward to the podium and begin by stating your name and address for the record.
Thank you, council members. George Lepiniotis with the law firm of Craig DeVault on behalf of the petitioner, 120BS LLC, more commonly known as the local Jimmy John's franchisee. I am here to present on behalf of my client for these next two agenda items, both this resolution and which is contingent on the rezoning through the proposed ordinance. Today, you have before you the opportunity to allow Jimmy John's to come into a parcel out on Bittersweet. It is just north of the Everwise Credit Union, located kind of kitty corner to the Martins PUD. This petition, both parts, both the petition for the special use and the rezone, have favorable recommendations both from the committees than the BZA. We also have spent some time with the Twin Branch Neighborhood Association, as you'll hear a little later. Councilmember Mammolenti was kind enough to invite us to his monthly meeting with the Twin Branch folks. Councilmember Hazen and Council President Hicksonball were also there, as was staff. We had a very productive meeting, except for the fact that we couldn't bring them sandwiches because the fire chief excluded it. But other than that, it was a great meeting, and it went freaky fast, and that's the last time I'm going to use that joke. As you will see in the packet before you, I don't know if the slide presentation is up, but if you could move on to slide number 3, please. The property located at 415 Bittersweet Road is largely overgrown. It is currently R1 residential. It suffers from a couple of unique attributes. First and foremost, there are high tension power lines that run through the center of the property. If we could advance to slide number 3, please. There are some high tension power lines that run through, oh, I'm controlling it, got it. Yeah, not too bright. But as you can tell, it's very overgrown. It currently has a rather dilapidated manufactured home on it. You can't see from either of the pictures that we had available to us, but there are the high tension power lines that cut through it. That reduces the buildable footprint. It reduces its attractiveness as an R1 future residential site. No one's going to build a house underneath those power lines on the very small acreage that is actually available. That size of the lot is what gave staff concern and led to this unique application process. Our inclination was to go for your C7 designation, which is the categorized, defined drive-through designation. But staff had concerns that in the future, if there were a new operator take over that, the city would be limited in its control over it, especially when it comes to what's called a high queue operator. So the queue line for a Starbucks is much more invasive to the neighborhood than the queue line for a Jimmy John's. And not joking this time, it is in fact that speed of which they can prepare food and get people in and out of the drive-through line that made staff comfortable giving us the recommendation and allowing for the site to be utilized in this manner when it is slightly undersized for something like a large-scale McDonald's or a Chick-fil-A or something that would create a significantly more higher volume of traffic. So those two things were taken into account, and rather than do that, doing it this way with the stipulations that we've agreed to during the BZA and the Planning Commission, the use in the future would be limited to, I believe it's just sandwich shop, which it allows it to stay in character what it remains today. They're not here with me, but the owners are two brothers, Nick and Zach. Nick just had his first baby, so he's in the hospital with his wife. But they're young guys. They're very excited. They're part of this community. They live here, so I think that it's going to be a Jimmy John's for the foreseeable future. I've highlighted the site here for you to let you see what it is. We've worked with staff to make sure that the driveway does not come out in a manner that is completely intrusive to the high-density residential across the way, the apartment complex, and also are looking to negotiate an easement with the Everwise Credit Union to the south so that when it's appropriate, traffic could stay out of Bittersweet and transition between businesses on an interior corridor. We will make the easement available as part of our stipulated conditions. Obviously, Everwise isn't applying for anything, so they have no motivation to do that, but we're hopeful that the discussions will go well. We've had preliminary discussions, and there is some interest, but in an institution that large, it's sometimes hard to get to decision makers, but we are working on it. This is the site plan. This is a preliminary site plan, but it is in fact the most updated site plan. It does show all of the conditions that were part of the conditional approval before it got to this body in whole. It shows mature trees. It shows that we have what's called a bailout line for the drive-through, so that there is really, if you get into the drive-through line and you decide you don't want to order, you got a way out. So you're not really jamming up the works. You can see the easement to the south where it really would go to nowhere. But again, if Everwise is cooperative, we hope that's the case. You will notice there's a small footnote on the bottom right-hand side as an accommodation to just everyone's work and effort. My client has agreed to actually run sidewalks all the way to the corner of Vistula and Vistula. I never said it right, Vistula. That includes in front of the residential parcel that is just north of this parcel. That will, I believe, complete the sidewalk loop, or at least get it closer to being complete, so that Bittersweet will have a better walking rating, especially for some of the students and other people who might be using that neighborhood. You'll also notice that our setbacks they're somewhat unique. They're a little bit broader on the back and a little bit different on the one side because of the residential nature of it. There's a fence requirement, and the fence will match what is there purposefully. That was requested at the Twin Branch neighborhood meeting, that the fences don't clash with each other. So it will be, I believe it's a 6-foot wood fence is what's planned there, with some mature trees on the residential borders to the north and to the west. I will note that the owner of the residential parcel was at the Twin Branch neighborhood meeting. I do not see him here today, but I can represent to you, and staff can verify that he was in favor of the project. Did not start there, but I think with the screening and some talks about his potential property value in the future, I think he came around nicely. There might have been a coupon for free sandwiches too. Mm-hmm. All right, that is the site plan. This is an example. This sits on your own McKinley. This is a standalone Jimmy John's that borders a residential neighborhood. This is a slightly different model than what you will see there on Bittersweet if it's approved. If this is approved on Bittersweet, Jimmy John's Corporate, as well as my client, will work with staff to get their architectural designs in place, and that is something they're already aware of as far as color schemes and materials. It will fit the neighborhood nicely, but also be a higher-end Jimmy John's. This one is over on Portage Road on the west side of the county. I believe that might actually be South Bend there. This is a slightly different design, but again, a standalone Jimmy John's. One of the things to notice in both of these photographs is really the low vehicular traffic. And that really does play into some of the concerns that staff had with the site, and why a restaurant like Jimmy John's is actually not a bad transition piece for this particular property, going from maybe higher use commercial back into residential to the west. That's a newer store that also gives you an idea of a standalone. This one's got some unique driveway queuing. This one happens to be in Benton Harbor, Michigan, but it is a newer store. The one that's being proposed at Bittersweet is much larger and would not have quite so much white because it would need to conform with your ordinance. But you see the awnings, you see the higher end stone material, curb and gutter all the way throughout, et cetera. I wanted to share a little bit about my client. They are the area Jimmy John's franchisee, as I said. They have, I believe they are up to 19 locations throughout north central Indiana up into Michigan, including all of those here locally. They are a couple of young brothers, both of them whom live in this area. They also participate in the community on a regular basis by providing both cash and food. They do that for Habitat of Humanity, they do it for Logan Center, they do it for Memorial Hospital, as well as others, and part of their growing into a community is also making sure they do that in these communities, such as Mishawaka. I'm told they're going to feed the firefighters if the chief will let food back in the building. Again, we talked about the effort with the Twin Branch Neighborhood Watch. There were 15 to 20 people. All efforts were taken to make sure that the meeting, and I believe Councilmember Mammolenti can speak to that the meeting was advertised, that was going to be the purpose. We had no dissenters or no one that showed any real concern with the project. Favorable recommendation from both the BZA and the Planning Commission. With that, any questions or concerns that I can answer at the moment?
Thank you, sir. Any questions from the council? Mr. Carroll.
Thank you, Mr. President. I know that Power Company was acquiring a parcel 2 or 3 to the west. I assume that they have no interest in anything else near your property?
We've not heard anything from them, no. So that we have no notice of additional easements or eminent domain proceedings or anything like that. You're the first to say anything, so.
Yep.
The property is subject to an easement by the Power Company for those high tensile lines that make it really a sliver where you can build.
Okay.
Thank you. Other questions? Ms. Hahn?
I see you have the location on McKinley and then the one on Portage. Are most of your restaurants accommodate a drive-through, or is this a newer concept? It seems like a lot of the ones that I'm thinking of in my head are kind of in a shopping complex or don't have a drive-through. Is this something that's going to be new for your clients?
Standalone is Jimmy John's new push.
Okay.
A standalone building as opposed to a strip mall. You're right. I tend to think of Jimmy John's being like a strip mall thing,
Yeah.
right? Back in the day, I thought of Chick-fil-A being a mall restaurant. But I think they're coming out with some new menu items. I don't know if you've noticed, but they're doing some hot sandwiches now, and I think they're looking to diversify their menu to build on their success. But Jimmy John's corporate dictates what the franchisees can do, and they had to approve the site. They actually had a selection of a couple out in that neighborhood, and felt this one was the most appropriate. So.
Does your client have any experience with a drive-through restaurant, or will this
Yes,
be their
they
first?
own a number of them
That have
that have
drive-thrus?
drive-through restaurants. Yeah, absolutely.
Other questions from the council? Mr. Viola?
Thank you, Mr. President. Well, I was going to ask, is there any drive-through Jimmy John's around?
The one on Portage has a drive-through.
That does have a drive-through?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. And I thought Mishawaka McKinley has a drive-through.
It does not.
It does not?
No.
Okay, yeah.
I've been
And that may
there,
be
I've been there before, it does not.
Yeah,
so.
that may be because of the nature of that site. It really butts right up on the back of the site.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Mr. President, if I may?
Mr. Mamalenti?
Thank you. Not necessarily a question, but more of a comment. Want to apologize to Mr. Lepiniotis that I'm unable to attend this evening, but also want to say thank you very much for your detailed presentation here this evening and also at our Twin Branch Neighborhood Watch meeting. I think you did an excellent job presenting, answered all the questions of the residents, and I do concur with your statement that I feel that everyone felt pretty comfortable moving forward. So thank you again to you and your clients.
Thank you again for hosting us. Really appreciate it.
All right. Any other questions? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else with us this evening who wishes to speak in favor? Please come forward. Then is there anyone participating remotely who wishes to speak in favor? Is there anyone here this evening who wishes to speak in opposition? Please come forward. And is there anyone participating remotely wishing to speak in opposition? Are there any council members who wish to speak? I would just add my thanks to staff for their creative solution for this project. Very well done. And if there are no other additional questions or comments, then I will call for the question. Madam Clerk, would you please poll the council?
Mrs. Hazen?
Yes.
Mrs. Volker?
Yes.
Mr. Carroll?
Yes.
Mr. Benicki?
Yes.
Mr. Emmons?
Yes.
Ms. Hahn?
Yes.
Mr. Mamalenti?
Yes.
Mr. Violi?
Yes.
Mr. Hixenbaugh?
Yes.
Proposed resolution passes 9-0.
Ordinances on second reading.
Proposed ordinance number 2024-09, and ordinance amending Chapter 137 of the Municipal Code of the City of Mishawaka, Indiana, as from time to time amended, commonly known as the zoning ordinance of 1966 of the City of Mishawaka, Indiana. This is to rezone from R1 Single Family Residential to C1 General Commercial for a restaurant with drive-through, Jimmy John's, 415 Bittersweet Road.
Thank you. May we have the committee report, please?
President, to the members of the Common Council of the City of Mishawaka, your Committee on Land Use Planning, to whom was referred the matter of proposed ordinance number 2024-09, report that they have examined said matter and that in their opinion should be adopted. This is signed by the members present, and I move for its acceptance.
Second.
A motion has been made and seconded to approve the committee report. Any additional questions or comments from the council? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, would you please poll the council on the committee report?
Mrs. Hazen?
Yes.
Mrs. Volker?
Yes.
Mr. Carroll?
Yes.
Mr. Beninky?
Yes.
Mr. Emmons?
Yes.
Ms. Han?
Yes.
Mr. Mamalenti?
Yes.
Mr. Violi?
Yes.
Mr. Hicksonball?
Yes.
Passes 920.
Thank you. With that, we'll move into second reading and public hearing on proposed ordinance 2024-09. Anyone wishing to speak in favor, please come forward. And Counselor, if you'd like, your earlier comments can be incorporated into the record on this matter by reference.
You don't want to go through it all again?
I would prefer not to.
George Lipiniotis, 4101 Edison Lakes Parkway, on behalf of 120 BSLC. I do ask that the council just reincorporate my previous comments on the resolution that was just passed. This is the second part of that resolution. Technically, it really is the first part. The resolution doesn't do any good unless it's zone C1. So appreciate that. Also want to thank all members of the council, clerk, and staff for doing it this way. Originally, we were going to have the resolution at the last meeting, and you all accommodated us doing it all on one night, as opposed to my client having to pay attorneys to be here on 2 nights. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Any questions from the council? Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else present this evening who wishes to speak in favor? If so, please come forward. Then is there anyone participating remotely who wishes to speak in favor? Is there anyone with us this evening who wishes to speak in opposition? Please come forward. Then is there anyone participating remotely who wishes to speak in opposition? Are there any council members who wish to speak? Hearing none, then I call for the question.
Question.
Madam Clerk, would you please poll the council?
Mrs. Hazen?
Yes.
Mrs. Volker?
Yes.
Mr. Carroll?
Yes.
Mr. Beninky?
Yes.
Mr. Emmons?
Yes.
Ms. Han?
Yes.
Mr. Mamalenti?
Yes.
Mr. Violi?
Yes.
Mr. Hicksonball?
Yes.
Proposed ordinance passes 920.
With that, we will now move into privilege of the floor, and we would invite members of the public to speak with respect to non-agenda items only under privilege of the floor. Seeing no one, is there anyone participating remotely who wishes to speak under privilege of the floor? Thank you. With that, we'll move into unfinished business, of which there is none. New business. Is there any new business to come before the council? Mr. Emmons.
Excuse me. Thank you, Mr. President. Just a reminder that the West End District Neighborhood Meeting will be May 16th at St. Gables at 7 o'clock. And our guest speaker will be Luann Hazen, which is the director of the Mishawaka Food Pantry, and explaining what that food pantry does for the citizens of Mishawaka. So we'll look forward to seeing everybody there on the 16th at 7 o'clock. And as usual, West End Bakery Goods will be there. Thank you.
Thank you. Other new business? Then hearing none, a motion to adjourn would be in order.
So moved.
We're adjourned. Thank you, folks.